Hit Season 2.
And I also just want to add one more point to it, is like the Mothership Core should not have been at third base. There wasn't even a pylon to overcharge there. Deer just kind of...
That was the last place he wanted it.
Yeah, it would have been more useful in the main base. What if the Liberator came from that angle, which it did later on. But anyways, this is a 1-0 for GuMiho. We'll see if Deer can get the momentum back here. Going to the New Gettysburg for game number 2.
Going into set number 2 of the final match of Group B. Down in the bottom left in the red, the Protoss player, it is Deer.
And down to the bottom right in blue, the Terran player bringing it back in game number 1. It is GuMiho. So, tables have turned here in this first one. GuMiho is now 1 win away from knocking Deer out. Deer came through a very tough group to get here. And he himself, I feel, has made vast improvements over his performances at the end of part of the Swarm. In Legacy of the Void, he's looking like his old Wings of Liberty self. And I feel like that last game, sometimes I'm really critical of the losing player. And I know we're somewhat critical of the Mothership Core positioning, but I feel like Deer played really well in that last game. But GuMiho is just so good at that kind of tug-of-war pressure. And this is another map where you can absolutely do that because it's very short rush distance by ground. But this is Deer's high priority map choice. This is priority 1. The map priority, obviously the top map is the one that's going to get in if your opponent doesn't have a higher one. Like your top priority map pretty much always gets in. And it will be the first map if both people highly prioritize it. GuMiho didn't pick it, so it comes in here as map number 2. I'll probably have to like one day fully explain how the map priority works. It's kind of, once you kind of get how it works, it's not that complicated.
Very basically, it's like the higher priority maps for both players get in.
Yeah.
Like, so you know, and they have different rankings, right? You know, he picked it second, the other guy picked it third. It's probably going to get in third, and maybe one of the other first picks for one of the players gets in at first or second, and maybe the first pick of the other player gets in first. Something like that. If they have similar maps, if they both pick the same map, it's almost definitely, I think 100% gets into the pool.
That's why Stats try to pick maps against Bomber, that he picked the same maps as Bomber, so that even if Sejong was there, it wouldn't make it into the priority, because if both players highly prioritize 3 different maps higher than Sejong, then Sejong won't make the list. So it's kind of like a strategy that you can do in that ban pick phase, or there's no bans, but that
I guess Bomber probably had to pick first because Stats is higher seed, just in general. Stats as the finalist of last SSL.
Yep.
All makes sense, all comes together eventually.
I think it's a blind pick though, actually, when I think about it. It's probably blind pick.
That would make more sense, but then it raises the question, how did he know that Bomber was going to pick those maps? Maybe he just knows Bomber so well, or Terran so well, that he's like, no, I just knew. And guessed it pretty well.
But before we get too bogged into this, this map is Deer's pick. That's kind of why I started this conversation. And the Cyclone that we see here is somewhat predictable, because I think it's, in my opinion, even better of a map for Cyclone bushes than Frozen Temple. Second Cyclone was started and then canceled. I think he wanted him to think. It's a very intentional move that he was going to go for a double Cyclone. Keeps the first one defensively. Also has that supply depot, so follow-up scouts for Deer are going to be very tough to pull off. And he's going for Stim. He wants this to look like it's a Cyclone push, but he's actually going for a very early ground-based bio pressure. Like I described, he's so good at this pressure, getting this tempo advantage and running with it. And this may be something that we see here in the second game, overthrow Deer. He needs to scout this and be prepared.
I mean, look at the build of Deer on the opposite side. He makes 2 Oracles to keep GuMiho on his side of the map, but he's going to have the Cyclone. He's going to have a lot of bio. He's also making an engineering bay to get turrets, but also the +1 to make this bio push stronger. It's going to really help with the defense, right, against the Oracles. But also behind this, Deer is making a third base. Coming in here, trying to snipe that Cyclone. He needs to kill that. The mass repair, and he does get it. Now what is there to deal with the Oracles?
There's no anti-air at all. He's got 1 Marine just popped out, not here. And this actually is probably his game.
That's just way too much damage, CG. That's going to be it. Taking a really quick one.
Mind games. He had this planned from the beginning. We said it early in the game, very obvious GuMiho would do a Cyclone-oriented build. Whether he goes for the fast stim or not, he usually doesn't have very many Marines at this timing. He pulls the Oracles, focuses down the Cyclone, and as you guys saw, even with a full surround repair, the Cyclone dies. There was no turret, the Cyclone dies, he has no more anti-air. Even if he had a few Marines, they would have died. No more anti-air, game ends. What would have happened if he didn't go for the stim build and went for the tank follow-up, or even the second Cyclone would have probably been the only way he lived. And that was funny because Deer saw that he was making it, but he called that as BS. He knew it wasn't real. Really cool build here by Deer.
Deer is such a smart player. You know, you were pointing it out. GuMiho more of like a multitasking god. He's really just going to get across. He does have good builds, but I feel like Deer's more of like a cerebral. He's a thinking player. And I mean, that was designed to kill GuMiho, right? That was a build designed to kill GuMiho on the map that Deer picked, and he gets that win. So now we go into game number 3. That was